Welcome back to a course on limits and continuity. In this lecture, we are about to see the concept of continuity and compactness. That is, we are going to relate the concepts of compactness and continuity by some means. Okay. In this, we'll begin with the theorem. This theorem tells you that F is a continuous mapping. Okay, we have a continuous mapping of a compact metric space X into Y. Here, what we have is that we have a mapping F that is defined from X to Y, okay, in which this X is a compact metric space. Okay, the set X is compact and Y is some metric space. So no special property that Y has. It is simply a metric space. Now we'll have to prove F of X. That is, F of X is going to be the image set of X, which will be a subset of Y, and we'll have to prove this is compact. Okay, let us begin the proof formally. So we are given that F from X to Y is a continuous mapping. This is a continuous mapping. Here X is a compact metric space. So whenever X is a compact metric space, we may say something about X. Okay, you may treat X itself as a subset of X. Okay, the entire metric space can be treated as a subset of X, and since it is compact, every open cover of X has a finite subcover. So this is the definition of a compactness that we state here, because we are about to make use of this one. Now we need to prove F of X is compact. In order to prove F of X is compact, we have to prove what? Every open cover of F of X admits a finite subcover. So this is what we have to prove. Okay, let the collection V alpha be an open cover of F of X. Okay, we have taken an arbitrary open cover of F of X. Since this is an open cover, what we can say, then each V alpha is open set in Y. So this is the thing that we have. Now we are about to make use of the topological definition of continuity. That is, a function is continuous if and only if F inverse of V is open in X for every open set V in Y. So this is what the topological definition of continuity. Here F is assumed to be a mapping from X to Y. Okay, that mapping is continuous if this statement holds. Since each V alpha is open in Y, F inverse of V alpha is open in X. Therefore, this collection F inverse of V alpha is an open cover of X. Now we are about to make use of the fact that X is compact. Now, by the compactness of X, we can find a finite subcover of F inverse of V alpha. Okay, so if we can find finite subcover in the sense what? This X is going to be contained in the union of F inverse of V alpha 1 union F inverse of V alpha 2 union till F inverse of V alpha n for some alpha 1 alpha 2 till alpha n. Okay, for these indices this is going to happen. Let us have a pause here and see some result over it. Okay, this is the ideas that I am about to tell now has nothing to do with the continuity. It is the base set theoretic property. Okay, let us consider a mapping from 1 2 3 4. Let me have, okay, 1 2 3 4 5. Let us have 5 elements here. Okay, A B C D. Okay, one maps with A and 2 maps with A, 3 maps with B, and 4 and 5 maps with C. Okay, this is also a well defined mapping. Now let me choose my V1 to be simply singleton A, V2 to be simply my singleton D. Now I have to look for the F inverse of V1. So what is it, my F inverse of V1? The inverse images of A. So the inverse images of A are 1 and 2. Okay, and inverse images of V2 is what? D has no pre-image, hence it is empty set. Now I am making the union of these two things. So the union is going to be simply 1 upon 1 comma 2. Okay. Now let me apply function to this. I am applying f to this set. This is what? F of 1 comma 2, and what is f of 1 comma 2? The images of 1 and 2. That is going to be singleton A. Okay. Now you just see the result or the relation between these two sets. Okay, initially what I had V1 union V2. This one I have to compare this one with f of f inverse of V1 union f inverse of V2. So this set is what? This is A and D. This set is what? This is simply singleton A. So this contains this, right? This means what? F of f inverse of V1 union f inverse of V2 is contained in V1 union V2. So this is the result that we will make use in this theorem to complete this theorem. Okay, that is why I have given these things here. These are not part of a proof, but these are necessary, or these are required in order to complete this proof. Okay, we have like this. Now what am I going to do is that I am going to apply a mapping to these sets. Okay, I am applying mapping to these sets in the sense I will have to apply this mapping to all the elements in the sets we have. Therefore what would I get is that f of x is contained in f of f inverse of v alpha 1 union f inverse of v alpha 2 union till f inverse of v alpha n. Okay, v alpha n. So based on the result that we have seen here, this is going to be contained in what? V alpha 1 union V alpha 2 etc. till V alpha n. So finally what we have is f of x is contained in V alpha 1 union V alpha 2 union etc. till V alpha n. We started with the open cover of f of x, and finally we were able to get some finite subcover for this f of x. Right? Thus f of x has a finite subcover. When we say this has a finite subcover, we may come to a conclusion that f of x is compact. And this completes the proof. Here let me remark a thing. This theorem may be stated as continuous image of a compact set is compact. So I am in the remark I am stating this as compact set, but in the statement of the theorem we had compact metric space. Can we able to connect these things? Yes, of course we can connect these things. Just because every set, okay, whatever may be the subset that you take from a metric space, if that is compact, okay, let that be compact, you can treat that subset as a submetric space of that metric space, and you have that to be compact, so it will turn to be a compact metric space. Whenever you talk something about compact metric space, you can always talk about compact sets. So this theorem clearly tells you continuous image of compact set is compact. Okay, next we have the definition of a bounded mapping. That definition, okay, so a mapping F that is defined from any metric space into Rk is said to be a bounded mapping if there exists a real number m such that absolute of f of x is less than or equals m for all x in x. So this is the definition of bounded mapping. Here I have written absolute of f of x. I have not specified, I have not written like a d of, I have not made use of the d of context. I have directly written absolute. Why? Because you can see very well from the definition of a mapping that it is defined from x to Rk. So your f of x will be a member of Rk. In Rk we consider the standard Euclidean metric. This is why we have absolute sign here. And while defining the bounded mapping, we have specified a real number m. We have not restricted anything upon that. It has to be some real number, right? Because whenever we talk about the metric will of course land in the set of positive real numbers. We know very well that it will land in the set of positive real numbers. That is why it is not necessary for us to explicitly say this m has to be a positive integer, but it has to be understood that this m has to be a positive real number. I said integer, it is not an integer. It has to be some positive real number. Okay, based on this we have the next theorem that tells you if f is a continuous mapping of a compact metric space. Again we have a mapping here that is defined from x to Rk x into Rk, then we'll have to prove f of x is closed and bounded. Let us see how shall we prove this. So this proof is quite straightforward, just making use of the previous theorem and the Hein-Borel theorem. Given f from x to Rk is a continuous mapping, and x is a compact metric space. So whenever you have these things, this tells you your f of x is compact. In where is compact? In Rk. By Hein-Borel theorem, your set f of x is closed and bounded. So this completes the proof.